friends, and welcome to another Thursday Thoughts. I'm Pastor Alex Bruning of First United Methodist Church in Jessup, Iowa, and I'm here to give you some thoughts. So on this Thursday Thoughts, we are kicking off our summer series and our summer schedule. So our summer schedule is going to be a little different. We are switching Thursday Thoughts to every other week. So we'll have it this week on June the 4th, and then we'll have it again on June 18th, I think would be 14 days from now. So this Thursday Thoughts is going to alternate with our Woman Wednesday. So we'll have Thursday Thoughts this week. Next week on June 10th, we'll have Woman Wednesday. June 18th, we'll have Thursday Thoughts. June 24th, we'll have Woman Wednesday. We're going to keep the schedule going probably through August at least. And it works really well with our summer series because we are looking at the 5 forgotten books of the Bible for this summer. So with the help of Dr. Robert Williamson Jr. and his book, The Forgotten Books of the Bible, we're covering the five scrolls for today. We are going to spend 2 weeks in each of what is known as the forgotten books. So the forgotten books, the 5 forgotten books of the Bible, Song of Songs, Ecclesiastes, Lamentations, Ruth, and Esther, those 5 books, are often kind of forgotten in the Christian faith. They aren't books that we preach from often. They aren't really in what we call our Revised Common Lectionary, which is our 3-year cycle of preaching. They're not really in the Narrative Lectionary, which is a 4-year cycle of preaching that we've been doing this past year. But they are huge in the Jewish faith. So our Jewish brothers and sisters, all 5 of these books correspond with a particular festival in their faith. So the book we're starting with, Song of Songs, sometimes called Song of Solomon, we'll get to that in a minute, but Song of Songs corresponds with our Jewish brothers and sisters for Passover. It is read every year during Passover where they celebrate God passing over their houses and saving their firstborn sons and providing them with a mass exodus from slavery, leading them into the wilderness. So it is, like I said, it is read at the celebration of the Passover. So they read this book every year in April. And each of these 5 books, they read every year corresponding. So Esther is read at the Festival of Purim, which is actually a time where they wear costumes and they kind of act out Esther. It's a very big deal. So although we have kind of forgotten these books, these 5 scrolls, as they're called, are super important in the history of the church and in the history of our faith, which is tied to and is the Jewish faith. So we're going to spend some time looking at them this summer. We're going to spend 2 weeks in each of these books. So our Thursday Thought video is going to be before we start each book. So this is the Thursday Thought before we start Song of Songs. So we're going to do a quick run through overview of the book in our Thursday Thought. And then the next week, Woman Wednesday, which will be in between the 2 Sundays where we preach on that book, we'll look at a female character in that book or draw upon a female perspective for commentating that book, something along those lines. So this Thursday Thoughts is before we start Song of Songs, and we're going to do a quick overview of what Song of Songs is all about. So let's start with its name. All right. Some of you know Song of Songs as Song of Solomon, which isn't uncommon. Some Bibles put Song of Solomon as the title. The reason being that originally it was attributed to Solomon. And that has been disproven. Solomon, although referenced half a dozen times in there, and the King's referenced a couple of times, probably didn't write this. Now, I can't guarantee that, but I can almost guarantee Solomon didn't write this. So its proper name is Song of Songs. And Song of Songs, we don't actually know who wrote it. In fact, it's believed that it's probably like an anthology of poems. So a ton of different writers, maybe not a ton, but different writers wrote this, different poems in this, and then somebody actually put it all together into one kind of cohesive story that we have here. We don't know how many writers were involved. We don't really know much about them. Some believe that it was a female writer because the female voice in this story is so prominent, and because we're in this story, we hear the female's emotions and perspectives and responses so much more than any other character in this story. So some believe it was a female writer. We don't actually know when it was written either. Because of the language used in it, it's really hard to date. It has some ancient language, it has some not so ancient language. And it doesn't really have any references to a particular time period, which is often helpful in dating books. And it doesn't have any references to like political events that took place, or to even really a particular place necessarily, that would make it easier to figure out when this took place. So what I can say is the scholars right now kind of agree it was around the 4th century BCE, maybe the 3rd century, but you're looking at 100 to 200 year time span there where we just really don't know. So to sum up so far, we don't really know when it was written, and we don't really know who or how many people wrote it. Great background, right? I'm really creating a context here for you. So what do we know about this text? Like I said, it's believed to have been written by several authors and then put together. So it's believed that some of it was orally passed down ahead of time, and that it was later then written down. So there is believed to be somewhat of an oral tradition in it. We do know that it has ties to Near Eastern love poetry, Egyptian love songs in there. We also know that well, we don't know. It was possible that some of these are marriage poems used at marriage ceremonies, but it's believed that the majority of them are not, that they were just erotic love poetry written between two people who loved each other. The story itself, so if you read the book of Song of Songs, which I'm going to encourage you to do before Sunday. It's only 8 chapters long. It takes about 12 pages in my Bible. It's not very long. So when you read the story, you will meet some people. You're going to meet a female lover and a male lover. The female lover is never named, neither is male lover for that fact, but the female lover, we know her as the Shulamite. There's one reference to the Shulamite, which is not her proper name, but more like of Jerusalem. She was from Jerusalem. And so we're going to refer to her as the Shulamite, just to make things easier. And the male lover, we don't know either. They're called by pet names in it, my beloved, my lover. And so we don't know their names, but from what we read in here, we believe that they are a young, unwed, both of them unmarried couple, who passionately love each other and passionately enjoy each other physically. There is flirting in here. There is double entendres in here like no other. There is invitation in here. There's physically being together that we hear about. There's desire in here. All of this between these two young lovers who just passionately love each other. So I told you this is erotic love poetry, okay? So it gets a little spicy, a little racy. Make you blush, for sure. At least if you're me, makes me blush. And for a long time in church history, that was, in fact, still today, people don't like that. First off, Song of Songs is one of 2 books in the Bible that does not mention God, okay? The other one being Esther. But Song of Songs, it doesn't mention God. It's spicy, it's racy. It is unbridled passion and lust and physical love for each other. And that makes the church nervous. The church believes in abstinence and procreation. We don't talk about enjoyment of sex like it's talked about here. And we often have this cloud of shame around sex or enjoyment of sex. And that's not at all what Song of Songs is about. It's about passion and enjoyment and desire. It's not about procreation. It's not about commitment. It's not about marriage. It's about physical enjoyment of each other's bodies. And it's not only about physical enjoyment of each other's bodies, it's about pride in one's own body and confidence in one's own physical appearance. And the church doesn't like that. So since as early as like the 2nd century, and even up to today, people have chosen to read Song of Songs allegorically instead of literally. So the allegory that is most dominant in the Jewish faith is that the male in this text, the male lover, is God, and the Shulamite woman is the people of Israel. And so it's an allegory for God's deep love for the people of Israel. Now, that has translated into Christianity as Christ and Christ's deep love for the church. So a lot of people just kind of ignore or disregard this raw sexual pleasure and unbridled passion in this, and instead just say, no, it's an allegory. You can't read it literally. No, it's an allegory. Now, I don't disagree that it could be an allegory. Now, I don't necessarily agree that it is an allegory, and I don't necessarily agree with that allegory, but I don't disagree that it could be an allegory. However, I think we lose something in our faith when we disregard it as being possible of just being a literal love between two people, a deep, passionate, unbridled, unashamed love, lust. So I'm a big believer in reading it literally and reading it allegorically. I don't think you have to choose between the two. And we're going to spend some time in the next couple of weeks not choosing between the two. So this Sunday, we're going to read it pretty literally. We're going to be reading this deep, passionate, unbridled lust, unshame approach to the physical body. And then next Sunday on the 14th, in a pre-recorded YouTube that'll drop at the 14th at 9 a.m. for worship, you're going to hear about the possibility of it being read as an allegory. But we're going to flip the allegory, which I'm really excited to do. So, Song of Songs, I don't think I've ever actually said it's about two lovers. Kind of mentioned that. So there is a female lover who is the predominant voice in this text, and there is a male lover who does have speaking parts as well, and then there's occasional third-party characters. So a big third-party character is the Daughters of Zion. Now, the Daughters of Zion or the daughters of Jerusalem, are the friends of the Shulamite, of the female lover. And one thing that we aren't going to get to talk about in our upcoming sermons that I would really, if we had more weeks, we would talk about is how this group of women sticks together, how they support each other, how they love each other. It's a great image of female partnership and female relationship and female bonding. So there's a terrible saying about bros before women, right? Well, that's kind of what these women are like. Like it's us women together before men. We're putting our sisterhood ahead of the men. So they're in this. There is an encounter with some police authorities, or authorities kind of like police, that are making rounds, patrolling, if you will, and attack the female lover in this. So that's a third party in there, and a terrible abuse of power towards this young woman. And then there's the two lovers. Her brothers. The Shulamite's brothers are briefly mentioned in here, and how they don't see her as a woman yet. How they see her as still this little girl, their baby sister, and how they're going to be typical big brothers, and no guy better come near their little sister. So they're in it as well. So there are a few other parties in it, but the main voice is the female voice, with the male voice having some major speaking parts as well. In this, we hear from the lovers. Each of them vividly describes the other one's physical appearance, which is what we're going to look at this coming Sunday in worship. They also describe encounters with each other. They describe desires with each other. They describe flirting with each other. So think of a romance novel. If you've ever read a romance novel, if you ever picked up a Jennifer Crusie book, okay, that's what you're going to be thinking of. This is early romance. It is an early romance novel. It is hard, I think, as somebody who's grown up in the church, speaking personally here, it's hard as somebody who's grown up in the church for me to read this and be comfortable, be entirely comfortable with what it's talking about. In fact, I'm glad you can't really see me because I'm probably blushing right now talking about it with you all. But I encourage you to ask God for help to open your heart and mind to what this text can offer us. I encourage you to read the book of Song of Songs in its entirety before Sunday. It won't take you very long. And I'm going to encourage you to pick an easier to read translation. Here's what I mean by that. So, some translations are old, just plain and simple. King James translation. It is an old translation. And so the language used in the King James translation is not the same as the language we use to commonly speak to each other today. Now, there are newer translations. The NRSV, that's the translation I use most of the time. It's a newer translation, but it still isn't quite common English, like what we're going to say to each other in conversation. So I'm actually going to recommend that you use the Common English Bible and read that translation. Now, you might not have that Bible at home, but if you get on BibleGateway.com, you can actually look up in tons of different translations any passage in the Bible. So you can look up Song of Songs in the CEB, Common English Bible translation. And I want you to read it that way. Another option is the Message. So let me tell you the difference between the Common English Bible and the Message. The Common English Bible is a word-for-word translation. It takes the Hebrew or whatever the original language is and word-for-word translates it into Common English. The Message Bible is a paraphrase. So it's going to take the Hebrew Bible or the original text, and it's going to kind of try and say, okay, what is this? What's the meaning behind this? And it's going to paraphrase so that it's easier to understand. So the Message is a paraphrase. Go ahead and read that if you would like. But if you want a more word-for-word translation like you're used to with your NIV, NRSV, King James, I would suggest the CEB, the Common English Bible. And I want you to read it with an open mind. So in order to do that, you need to prayerfully go into this. Okay? Some of you have probably been told it's an allegory your entire life. Some of you have maybe never read Song of Songs. Maybe it's been shunned from your life, your entire life. Maybe you've just never read it. Maybe some of you believe it's just plain wrong and it shouldn't be in the Bible, because that's a perspective out there as well. No matter where you stand on the Song of Songs spectrum, I encourage you to go into it with an open mind, to pray to God to allow you to hear the message that God has to offer you, and allow you to be open to the Spirit's moving. I'm going to encourage you to read each of the 5 scrolls in their entirety before we preach on them. So starting with Song of Songs this week. If you have any kind of background questions about Song of Songs, I'd be happy to talk to you about those or to try and answer those to the best of my ability, or do some research to find out for you. I would love to help with that. I always love researching. This has been a very quick overview of the background of Song of Songs, what we know about it, little that we do know, and also a quick overview of what Song of Songs has in its context, what it is, not context, has within it, in its storyline, kind of what it's about. It has been called the Holy of Holies. Song of Songs, the Holy of Holies. And some believe that it is the Holy of Holies because It is simply about the goodness of God's creatures. It isn't about anything else. There's nothing else going on. It's just pure joy and goodness of God's creation. Enjoying each other, sharing enjoyment in oneself. And so go into this thinking, this is the Holy of Holies. I am going to encounter the most holy in this. And allow yourself to be moved by it. That's what I have to offer for my thoughts this week on Song of Songs. I cannot wait for you to join us at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning for our drive-in worship. It is BYOCS. Bring your own communion supplies Sunday. So bring your own communion supplies for those in your vehicle. We will break bread together and partake in this holy sacrament with one another. On June 14th, 21st, and 28th, you will find pre-recorded worship services on our YouTube channel. Also, next Wednesday, you'll find our Woman Wednesday, Wednesday, June 10th. It will be posted on our YouTube channel, hopefully at 2 p.m. That is my goal. And then you'll find our Thursday Thoughts on Ruth, on the book of Ruth, 2 weeks from today on June 18th. And you'll find our Woman Wednesday on Ruth. Maybe not actually Ruth, maybe somebody else in Ruth, but you'll find our Woman Wednesday about the book of Ruth on Wednesday, June 24th on our YouTube channel. I hear a child pounding upstairs, which is my cue that I should probably be done. So thanks for sharing, or thanks for letting me share my thoughts with you, and I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments down below, or send me an email, text, phone call, whatever it might be. Know that I miss you and I love you, and I cannot wait to see you Sunday for drive-in worship. Bye, friends.